NFL Week 2 is upon us. Week 1 is behind us. We had Tyreek Hill absolutely destroy the slate. We're coming off of a crazy Monday Night Football ending with a undrafted rookie free agent just walking it off for the Jets. That is the craziness of the NFL. Josh Allen had three interceptions, one fumble, and now we are going to talk about some Week 2 DFS. And with that, I am Hilo, and this is First Mover. My guest for this evening is none other than Trevor Tipton. You know him from Player Profiler Pods. You know him from Bet Openly. Trevor, how are we doing tonight, man?
I'm still trying to grasp what I just watched in New York for 2 straight days.
Yes.
That was just a wild ending to walk that off that way. I was texting Mark during the show. We had one of our bets tonight was on Cook over rushing yards. His prop was 43.5. He had 39 at halftime, and we had to sweat it into overtime to get it. So that was just a wild way. I got super weird on the showdown tonight. I love just getting I left like $4,700 on the table, and if I would have ran Diggs at captain instead, I would have been I would have made some real money tonight. But you got to get weird on these showdowns, and I don't want to split it 4,000 ways. I want to have some weird lineup that makes right.
It was funny too. We were talking offline that this was such a weird showdown year so far. We're into week 1. We've already had a captain optimal defense, and it was looking like we were going to have the old backdoor backup quarterback trick here tonight. But of course, it was Zach Wilson. He didn't matter at all. But it's been a crazy week 1. It's looking like it's setting up for a crazy year of NFL football. And that's going to lead us right into what we're going to talk about today, which is the pricing release for week 2. Before we get into that, though, you were mentioning some prop betting, and I know you've got a show with us at Player Profiler as well, but talk to me a little bit about Bet Openly real quick.
Yeah, so Bet Openly, here's some of my things that I love about it. One, we're legal in almost every state. There's a few states it's not, like Nevada. Nothing's legal there unless you're a big giant casino and give them lots of money. But states like Florida, states like Texas, where you don't have technical legal books yet, because this is peer-to-peer betting. So you're not betting against a book, you're betting against another degenerate. So one of the things I love is when I lose, at least I know my money goes to somebody else on the other side and it's not going to some big book. One of the other things I really love is it's better lines, better odds, and it's 1% juice. So what does that mean for somebody that's just listening? What a book's trying to do on average is split it. They want to get the line right. They want to take actions on both sides and take 10% hold off of that. Bet Openly eliminates that. So instead of paying minus 110 tonight or minus 127 for the Bills, Bet Openly had their money line at minus 115. And if you would have bet that, you would have won, and you would have only paid 1% out of that. So the upside there for me is all the options it has. We also have DFS plays now. So those are housed by Bet Openly. It's better line, better odds. A lot of times where, let's just say a 3, where you got on an average site now, you have to spend $100, and you win 6 back. On Bet Openly, you're generally going to win 30 to 50% more back. So a $100 bet, you're going to win, 700 to 900 back on that exact same player props. So that's something I'm really excited about. And I'm super excited about our partnership with Player Profiler.
So I didn't know that you're talking about parlay type player props, right?
Yeah. So that's new. It just got launched at the end of baseball season, and we have a whole competitor now. So it's better. Same thing. It's better lines. It's better odds. And it's 50% less juice than you're paying at any other one that exists on earth today.
That's awesome, man. If you're not going to listen to Trevor, if you're not going to listen to me about it, let's hear from the Podfather about it real quick, shall we?
Hey, so many ask me, what's wrong with sports books? Why so many of them fail? The answer is simple. They don't innovate. They're just casino sports books on a phone. That's all they've been. There are a few that are doing a good job. We partner with them. Most of them, not so much. Until Bet Openly came along. Bet Openly said, hey, we're going to innovate. We're going to do something groundbreaking. We're going to have peer-to-peer betting in all states, and you pay 1%. When you win, you pay just 1% on your winnings. You heard that right. It's 1%. With code Underworld, you qualify for just that 1% transaction fee on Bet Openly. It gives you ultimate flexibility to set your own lines and browse lines that others have set. Think about it. That's what betting should be. And now that is the reality. BetOpenly.com. The code is Underworld. Check it out.
And we're back, baby. Let's talk about some DFS, shall we, Trevor?
Yeah, let's get into it. Let's get through this. This is the first time Mark and I are both looking at pricing for this week. So let's dive into it.
I wanted to do that. That's kind of interesting that it worked out that way. I like doing these, like you see the viewers are seeing our first reactions. And I like it that way because you kind of get a sense of how we're reacting to seeing things for the first time. And there's a lot of stuff that kind of comes with that. And I think that's one of the cool things about this show is we're able to kind of take those initial reactions, develop them over the rest of the week, obviously, and then hit them hard once we start getting all the information in, late week, Friday, Saturday, early Sunday type. So it's really cool to get this kind of first sneak peek look at player rosters, like the game environments, all the things that we're kind of thinking about late week, getting that first look. So let's talk about some game environments, and we'll kind of do that through this discussion of the quarterback position. What kind of jumps out at you from this first initial screenshot here, which is kind of the top half of player pricing at the position?
Trevor Lawrence is going to be massively owed versus the Kansas City Chiefs at $6,700. Like, I see a lot of ownership coming that way at his price, right? Patty's 8,300. You go right in and you see, Lawrence right there with a matchup that, has one. I think it's going to have the highest total on the slate. I was just looking at that.
Yeah.
Yep, it's going to have the highest total on the slate as of right now for that game. It's over 51.5. It's actually moved up a little bit. So, and there's a lot of 40-point games on this slate, a lot. So I think that's going to be an interesting spot. The other one is Allen's pricing after that performance, because they had already said it, versus the Raiders. I think we might see a lot of people not go to Allen and pay up. And this might be a spot to really take advantage of Allen, come back, bounce back to get the Raiders. And he might, I would be surprised after that performance if he gets a ton of ownership this coming week.
Yeah. And that's you mentioned a couple interesting things there. The first of which I think is this idea that the fact that you mentioned that we have a ton of low 40s game totals in week one. This past week, at 1 week season, we talked a lot about the fact that scoring was down last year pretty significantly. If you look at 2022, which was the COVID season, that was the most recent spike year in scoring over the previous 10 seasons. And on average, each team managed 2.88 offensive touchdowns per game. That trickled down all the way to 2022 last year, down to just 2.43 offensive touchdowns per team per game. So that's a fairly significant. We're talking about almost a full or almost a half of a touchdown per game per team less was scored last year when compared to 2022. So theoretically, we supposed over at 1 week season, again, I'll drop that name one more time, that makes finding game environments and that game environment that could explode that much more important. And we've always been one to attack game environments, but now we're looking at like the potential for extreme overstacks. And we've kind of seen this from big name players in the DFS scene over the previous couple of years, primarily Osimo. He almost makes his brand through this like overstack mentality. And it seems he hits like a milli every single year doing this kind of technique. And what do you make of it? Is that like kind of the right thought process? Are we on the right path here? What do you make of the fact that scoring is down in the league over the previous couple of years, and how we kind of transform that into our DFS process?
I think it opens up the door to a lot of people that are hand building more than it had before. I think
Yeah.
it allows you to get unique and I'm more of a single entry 3 max player is what I prefer. So what I've noticed is I've done well on those. Like tonight, let's talk about the showdown. I ran a 5-1 bill stack. Um,
Yeah.
that was, I looked at it. I actually went double running back and did some defense with kickers because it was just, I thought the weather, it'd be a low scoring game because that to me was everybody was just Buffalo, Buffalo, Buffalo. This is going to be a shootout. Garrett Wilson, right? Like, so I want to zig when they zag. It's interesting you bring that up because I really noticed it this week. Like I was going through lineups, sitting there watching the game. So I'll start going and looking, okay, what's this guy doing? What's this guy doing? What's this guy doing? And the overstack seems to be there. And I think down to roster construction again, being so important, whether you're playing season long or DFS, that really understanding roster construction probably matters more now than it did in any recent time in DFS.
Yeah, so super interesting. Obviously, that's all from the theoretical realm, but it's an interesting observation. And obviously, when we're talking about game theory, I'm the game theory guy, right? When we're talking about game theory, obviously a massive piece of our decision making puzzle is our observations of the field, because now we can introduce those exploitative tendencies to take advantage of field tendencies. A lot of big words. That just means basically we're looking to, as you so eloquently put it earlier, kind of zig when the field zags, right? We don't want to be caught up in similar roster constructions as the field, because now we are fighting against a larger portion of the field on our way to first place. And that's really all that matters, is we want to try and get to first place, right? So with that discussion kind of behind us, what do you think about this guy right here? Mr. Anthony Richardson. He is priced up 900 more than he was in week 1, which this is probably where his price should have started the season. He was a player of mine that I played in week 1, but now that he has that nasty red Q next to his name, and he's been priced up 900, which is a fairly significant price movement considering where he was. What do you think his ownership is going to be like this week in what could be a more neutral matchup here against Houston?
I think the public in general is going to see Houston, think bad, think Richardson had a great game. He can run on them. Even at that 6,300, I think there's a chance he goes up. I'm really interested in, you skipped over, but I'm interested in the guy that was right below him. So,
Okay.
which was Mr. Goff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see where that goes and where his ownership lands in that game. So that's, because why I bring it up is that's a team you can now overstack, right? If you start talking about, right, how do you get access to them? Goff, Laporta, Amon, and run maybe both running backs. That's, if you want to start about, and I brought that up because they're a good team to name for overstacking, in my opinion. But that's a way to get there. But I think Richardson's going to end up being a lot higher owned than he probably should be this week.
Yeah, and we look at what this game did to us last year. Week 4, it was the game that you had to have. Obviously, over 90 points combined. This was the shootout of the season last year between these two teams. But also in that same vein, on the other side of that game, both offensive tackles for the Seattle Seahawks got injured and are, I would say, highly questionable to play in week 2, considering who they're going out and looking for in free agency. Hint, hint, 41-year-old offensive tackles. So, what do you make of the opposite side of that game? If we're looking to kind of overstack / game stack this environment, what do you make of Seattle coming off a poor performance, down 2 offensive tackles? How do you think they're looking to attack this spot?
I think Lockett's health is going to matter a lot in this game.
I think he's already cleared, I think.
Did he clear already? Okay, I hadn't seen an update. But you saw in that Rams game, if you watch it and go back and watch the tape, that offense dramatically changed the second he wasn't in there anymore.
Yeah.
So that was a big one for me. I think the public, because of, and like I said, why I brought that one up again, I think the public, because of that game, is going to think about last year and go back to it. And I think we could see the opposite there this week. I think we could see a grind out, tight scoring, little more defensive battle in that game. Detroit's defense has definitely improved. So I'm interested to see where that goes. And it'll be interesting for me how they can come back. Now, if that game's low ownership, it's going to attract me to that environment. For me, I'm always staring at ownership. I want to get guys that are much less lower owned than the field is.
Yeah, for sure. And what's interesting to me about Seattle's defense is they're never really one to alter their game plan for the opponent, right? They're typically going to run the same defense. And what bit them last year is they didn't have the athletic linebackers to play that Tampa 2 with the linebackers dropping in coverage over the slot. Now they've got Bobby Wagner back. They've got a bunch of new bodies there in the linebacking core. Where they could potentially, handle a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown. You look at Seattle's performance on defense last year. They were the best team, I think, against perimeter wide receivers over the entire season. They gave up like under 2 or 3 touchdowns to perimeter wide receivers the entire year, and the first one came in like week 12. It was insane. Seattle was the team that you did not want to look at to attack it with perimeter wide receivers. So that's an interesting piece of this puzzle, I think, as far as how we think Detroit is really going to be approaching this game, because they don't have any freaking perimeter wide receivers. So that's an interesting, I think, chess match that we're going to see in this one, is how does Seattle's defense now operate with athletic linebackers that are football smart and athletic when they have kind of Amon-Ra streaking to that layer between the linebackers and the safeties. Any thoughts on how that, Seattle's defense is going to react to this situation?
That's what I said. I could see this going low scoring too.
Yeah.
And I can see I really could see that. You broke it down really well. I can't break it down any better than you gave it. And there you saw Detroit, even in that win, Detroit missed Jameson. They need that spacer outside. I think they need to use Gibbs, get Gibbs outside more as fast as that guy's electric. And I think they need to get him outside and get him in the receiver more until they get Jameson back for that reason. And at the same time, you saw what the Rams just did when they put Puka in that, Cooper Kupp role. So at the same time, I could see, Amon having a big game, but it not being a high scoring game.
What's interesting to me, too, from the fact that we saw how kind of one-dimensional Detroit's offense was in the absence of JMO, is they have a guy on their roster that is capable of that. They didn't freaking play him. The Khalif Raymond ran
Josh Reynolds instead.
Yeah, dude. Khalif Raymond ran a 4.32 40 coming out in 2022. Like, this is the guy that you need playing instead of Marvin Jones, the dinosaur, instead of Josh Reynolds. You need Khalif Raymond on the field. So it seems like they're just bent on just keeping him in the kick returner duties, but it's like you have what you need who's sitting there and you're just not playing him. So that would be an interesting, I feel like Detroit needs Khalif Raymond on the field to open things up a little bit underneath for Amon-Ra, for Gibbs, for all these guys, for Laporta, all these guys who are kind of working in the middle of the field. So that was just interesting to me. They have it and they're not using it. I don't know, man.
Said a lot of NFL teams this week.
Yes, indeed. Let's move over to running back. We talked about a couple of game environments. I don't want to take this too long, but running back, I'll give you my thoughts first. And with just looking at these player pricings, this middle range in here with your workhorsey, or used to be, well, let's talk about that real quick. Derrick Henry getting outsnapped by Tajay Spears. We know that obviously Derrick Henry has had paths to 30 plus touches in competitive game environments. Then they get a competitive game environment where it's a 16-15 final, and Derrick Henry is not is being outsnapped and outtouched not outtouched. So he was outsnapped, but Tajay Spears did not see the same touch per snap rate as Derrick Henry did. But is that a concern to you? Are you interested? I mean, we got King Henry at 7.4 here. Are you at all interested in that, in what is a much softer matchup on the ground than New Orleans?
He's for sure interesting to me because of that. I think the field could overreact to
Yeah.
how they use Tajay. Just because that's what the field does. Most people overreact to these things. And so he's definitely going to be there. And we know what Ryan Tannehill isn't. We saw him again, like he's a serviceable quarterback at this point, but he has Hop and Burks, and then he was targeting Hop. Like Burks was open half the game and they weren't throwing to him. They were throwing to Westbrook. Like I just didn't, that game was maddening if you had any people in it based on, Tajay, I have a lot of handcuff, but he's on my bench. So like good for best ball, but like he was on my bench there. So Henry's again, if Henry's a guy, if you get it low ownership, who can rush for 200 yards and 2 to 3 touchdowns on a slate, Henry's one of those few guys. And if you start getting him at 5, 6, 7%, he gets real sexy real fast.
Yeah. Like we alluded to a couple of times here, Henry is the type of guy who has a path always to 30 plus touches at the running back position. And if this is a guy who we're going to see priced down at 7.4, I mean, let's look at his pricing last season. Was he ever 7.4? One game below 8K, 2 games below 8K the entire season, and 7.4.
And he ran 7 routes and got 3 targets.
Yeah, he put up, what was a 49-yard reception too? Yeah, so this is a guy that is highly appealing to me at 7.4 against a Chargers defense that we know has struggled against the run in the past. And yeah, if his ownership is like you're talking about, even if we hit that like 5 to 7%, I'm going to be highly intrigued. I'm going to want some of that for sure. What 100%. Do you think? What do you think about old Josh Jacobs, who immediately comes in 9 days after not having a contract signed into his holdout? And he immediately comes in and completely is the same workhorse dominant type running back. What I'm concerned about is the workload. He had the workload. It was there. So are we going to see, you think, some box score watchers who look at his box score from week 1 and kind of pass over this name in this kind of middle of tier? I mean, again, Josh Jacobs is 7.1. That's extremely priced down. If you look at him, well, okay, maybe not. Towards the end of the season when he was established.
Yeah, once they finally once it caught up, when he was just dominating, it was like, okay, we need to fix his pricing here. So Jacobs for me is interesting this week. We just watched what Cook and Hall did. Hall's a whole nother discussion for me. I think he looked good. I think he's missing a top gear. If you look at his run speed, he's clocked at 21.3 or 4 something last year. He was running 20 miles an hour today. So he's coming off an ACL. It was insanely impressive. He did that. They did that against them. And Cook had a bunch of solid carries too. And we know Josh is going to get that. So now, getting into game theory, what if no one's going to pay up for 2 running backs. What if we get them at 12%, right? Like that's, for me, that's when it starts getting really interesting, is how do I find low price receivers to allow me to be very unique in the field with another running back that has 150 plus yards and 2 touchdowns in him any given day.
Yeah, 100%. The third name that kind of strikes me, and again, we'll save the game theoretic discussions about 3 running back rosters in today's NFL game. First of all, the field is kind of moving away from it, obviously, with the NFL as a whole moving away from workhorses. But it's interesting when you look at, and I did a lot of the study for best ball, when you look at the hit rate, and Sam Sherman did a lot of study and for best ball as well into running back explosive weeks versus wide receiver explosive weeks. And he defined that by 25 plus fantasy points in half PPR, which is you're approaching 30 in full. And the running back hit rate and the wide receiver hit rate was very, very similar, with the running backs providing more mega hit rates, which was your 40 plus fantasy point games, than wide receivers last year. So that's interesting in and of itself. But now when you look at the field's tendencies of moving away from 3 running back builds, they start to become a lot more appealing when you're talking about doing things that the field is not, providing a clearer path to first place. So with that discussion, another name that kind of immediately jumps off to me is in that first game environment that we talked to in Kenneth Walker. This is a guy who all the concerns about DJ Dallas or a Zach Charbonnet or whoever the hell is going to be running behind him pushing Kenneth Walker for touches, Kenneth Walker was the guy in week 1. And he's priced at only 5.8. And if this game environment kind of becomes conducive to fantasy production, this is a valid area for that fantasy production to flow against a Detroit defense that has been notoriously poor in the trenches. What are your thoughts on old Ken Boy here?
I think I'm excited for him this week. He had a 67%, attempt usage last week. He was in on 65% of the snaps. That's what I want to see out of my bell cow in today's environment. And my only worry is at his price is he is going to be massively overowned. That's my only fear.
Yeah.
Because it a lot, right? Because you can start taking an expensive guy, you add him in. His price worries me a little bit. Like, I just think as we start looking, like, scroll down a little bit for me, as we start looking and his price range right there.
Yep.
I just think the field might flock towards him because, again, I try to think like what's the masses going to do, and they're going to think about that game environment last year. But again, like you said, not a lot of people are running 3 running backs, which is an opportunity to get different. I wanted to hear your take. This is the one I wanted to ask you about. Yes. What did you think of Mr. Arthur Smith's usage of his running backs in week 1?
He's just Taysom Hill is the player troll to fantasy rosters. Arthur Smith is the coaching troll to fantasy rosters. They have all this, and I broke this down actually on the NBC end of week pod because I covered that game for NBC this week. And it just seems to me that their defense has been so improved. I mean, they added Jesse Bates on the back end. They added Bud Dupree in the linebacker core. They have all these new names up front, and they legitimately just manhandled the Panthers front 5. And if that is going to be the case in game environments where they are just winning the trenches on both sides of the ball, because we know their offensive line is also top 10 in the league, in those type of game environments, I just think that they're just going to continue this, like, we're just going to control the ball. We're going to grind it out. We're going to, take the sporadic downfield shot to Kyle Pitts or I just think that they're comfortable when they are able to control the trenches like that. And if that's the case, what kind of gave me the most pause with that backfield situation is that Tyler Algier was not just mop-up duties. He was mixing in at like a 45-50% snap rate before they had this game in hand. And that is troublesome. Yes, like it's awesome to see Bijan running the most routes out of the 2. It's awesome to see him have 6 targets on 19 pass attempts from Desmond Ridder. But at the same time, we were kind of drafting this guy in best ball as if he were the unquestioned kind of lead back, and he was not in week 1. That's my take right now. What's your read on this situation?
So I got a lot of flack for my Robinson Tyler takes this year, and here is why. I trust Arthur Smith like 0%. I think
about as far as you can throw him.
Yeah, and I'm a big guy. And Taysom Hill, I think the Taysom Hill analogy is really good. And I heard some stuff that he was going to get used. I think Bijan is all-world talent.
Yeah,
I think he's going to have 2 to 3 monster games this year. I think his just talent is just going to overwill a couple of these where he breaks 80 yards runs, but he doesn't get caught and he scores. I drafted way more Tyler Algier I have 5% Bijan. I just wasn't going there because I didn't trust Arthur Smith. And I don't victory lap week 1, but the thing you said it best for me is he was getting used when Tyler was still getting used when the game mattered.
Yeah.
Like that really stood out to me. I think they're going to do it. I think he'll run the hot hand. He said it after the game. I don't care about fantasy. Drake London out there running wind sprints.
Oh man.
It was they're going to be hard to play. And I think if you're going to play them, I think what you're going to do is overstack this game. I think you're going to play both their running backs and try to get that total usage when you do.
Yeah, that's super interesting. The other thing I don't like this game environment at all. I mean, you're looking at Green Bay at Atlanta, two of the slowest offenses in the league as far as clock remaining on snap. These guys are both looking to hide their inefficiencies and kind of grind out a victory. On the backs of that very handily win from Green Bay in week 1, I could see the field gaining some interest in this and in game environment. And if that's the case, it's just kind of a full stay away for me at this point.
I couldn't agree more.
Any other running backs that you kind of have your eye on here?
As I look through up top, I mean, CMC is going to be $12,000 at the rate he's going.
Yeah, the old nod to Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson days.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see Ekeler's usage. He came up today on the report. Josh Kelly got used a ton.
Yeah,
that was another one that was really interesting. I think Pollard could have a solid game. We saw what Cook just did against the Jets. I think the Jets aren't the Giants, so they're going to Dallas I think should have to play this week, even with no Aaron Rodgers. And then the other up top that I think people are going to probably for me fade is just a scroll down there a hair is I think people are going to go to Etienne, and I'm just not as high on Etienne this year because I think Jacksonville has a good pass blocking line, but they are suspect at run blocking. So I'm probably not going to be playing a lot of Etienne.
Yeah, Etienne was a guy that I had in week 1 because there were 3 players in week 1, and this is less of a recap show, but there were 3 players in week 1 that I felt like you had to account for in rosters. It was Justin Jefferson, it was Calvin Ridley, and it was Chris Olave. Those 3 players on a price, on a range of outcomes per salary equation, they were head and shoulders above the rest of the field. So there were some rosters where I accounted for Calvin Ridley through Travis Etienne as a if Calvin Ridley does not put up a valid a GPP worthy range of outcomes production, then it had to come from somewhere because the Jags were in a spot where they were highly unlikely to fully fail. Yeah, probably not going there this week against KC, especially with Jones back, signed his deal. He's back for KC. So that'll be an interesting game environment to watch as well. I want to quickly talk about these 2 guys. These were your, oh shit, they kind of surprised us. And with Austin Ekeler's ankle injury, I think Staley said today that he didn't know if he would practice this week, could become an issue. I could see, and then with Kyron Williams' 2 touchdown outburst, I could see the field being like, oh, look at this. I'm getting 2 GPP worthy running backs at only $5K a piece. But it's like Williams is playing San Francisco and Kelly is playing Tennessee, the 2 worst matchups on the ground in the league.
I hope they are massive. I hope they are massively owned for that very reason.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Yep. Okay. Sweet. Same page. Let's talk about wide receivers real quick. I'll scroll all the way up. We've got a bunch, we've got a bunch of the top wide receivers in the NFL are not on the slate, which is interesting from the jump. Stephon Diggs is fresh as in everyone's mind coming off a 10-catch, 100-yard, and 1 performance on Monday Night Football in that terrible game. Jamar Chase is coming off one of the worst games of his NFL career. Joe Burrow is coming off of the worst game of his NFL career. T. Higgins is coming off a goose egg And T.
I
Higgins
don't
was
want
like
to talk.
top. T. Higgins was like top 6 in air yards and got goose egged. So that was an interesting one. Now against Baltimore, let's talk about Cincy real quick. Is the overstack viable for this Bengals offense?
This is the environment I love to go to.
Let's
This
go.
for me is the field's going to overreact. Right? T had 140 air yards, 8 targets, and had no receptions.
Yeah.
I don't
That's
know
hard to
that
do.
that's ever been done in the NFL. I've been trying to find out because I don't think it's humanly possible.
Yeah.
So, but this is the game. We know what Cincinnati's offense can do. Burrow was hurt during training camp. He needed a game to get in. Everybody's going to think, oh, this is a tough division match. This is a game these are the game environments I love to attack. I think the field's going to be off of them, and I'm on the opposite side. Now, this is when I love to go grab everybody, sign me up, give me Burrow, give me T, give me as much of that, game environment as you can. And then, right, we saw, right, Dobbins out now. So we're going to see Justice Hill be able to come in, with some bringbacks. Yeah, I mean, that's, Zay. I mean, Zay's usage was, what dreams are made of for us Zay drafters. I mean, I think they're, Andrew's probably back this week.
Coming off of DNP.
Yeah, like this is the type of game that the field avoids generally, and I love to attack.
This is the one that before looking at player pricing, this was the one that I was most intrigued with, pertaining to that opening discussion of potential to overstack a game environment. You could do it both ways. You could throw a Lamar Jackson double for very minimal cost. You could throw a Joe Burrow double coming off of that stinker at very minimal ownership. There's a lot of things that you can do in this game. And the fact that J.K. Dobbins is lost for the season, maybe his career, which is terrible, but the fact that he's out and now they have Justice Hill, who is a fairly poor straight line runner with hands, and Gus Edwards, who is like Jamal Williams reincarnate. He is just like a 3-yard grinder. Do we think, and with Todd Monken now at offensive coordinator, do we think that they're going to go to the run game in a conference matchup against one of the better teams in the AFC? No, hell no. I think they're going to be chucking the football. And I think Cincinnati is going to be responding. We've seen their offensive tendencies. They're going to be chucking the football as well. So that is exactly the kind of mix that I like in the honeypot for a blow up type game.
This could be, I said it here on Monday, this could be a Irv Smith breakout week.
Oh, spicy.
Yeah, so you just got Baltimore right now, but right, we add Irvin at his price. It's, when you start talking about overstacking a game, those are the plays that at what his ownership is most likely going to be. He has the skill set to break the slate.
Yeah.
Like that's the, how do you get leverage on the field? You start overstacking that game and you start looking like, oh, there's some really interesting options right there. And how do I get different? Right? Like I could see going the other way too. If you say you love Baltimore in this game, I love going there. And then if you want to get really weird in like a GPP, like we're talking the Millie, and you want to get weird, go double tight end. Like I know it's not recommended, right? Like, right. But if you want to get like wild and weird, those are 2 tight ends that could put up, 25 points, and you're going to have an ownership that no one has. If I'm building 150 lineups, I don't mind making 1 or 2 that are just obnoxiously ugly that way.
Yeah. I was just playing around with in the background with the player pricing. It's difficult to get some of those mid-range running backs that we talked about with this like game overstack, but I think you can do some interesting things. One of them, you can save a couple of bucks here, go Joe Burrow on this side instead. But there's a lot of interesting things that I think, and I don't know, man. I kind of get the sinking suspicion that Mark Andrews might go a little overlooked here, coming, especially considering Isaiah likely had 1 catch in his stead last week. Do you think Andrews is going to be missed by the field? Is that possible? Can that happen? I don't know, man.
I mean, I think so. The other one that could be sneaky in this game is who did Baltimore sign, or they didn't sign? I think they actually activated him from practice squad. Melvin Gordon.
Ew.
Like,
yep. Mm-hmm.
Right. So we just talked about, we know what Justice Hill isn't. We know what Gus Edwards isn't. Again, how do you differentiate a guy that could come in and is going to be dirt cheap? What's he for? How much is he? 4,400?
44. Yeah.
Right. I mean, now that starts, right. That gives you a player in that game that's going to open some doors. And, if you want to overstack that game, that's for me, that's ugly enough and uncomfortable enough that I might play it.
That is right up your alley, dude. Knowing you for a while.
Yeah, I like. Hey, it's served me well. Like, I like doing weird stuff that, like, just gets you out of the box. And people are like, "Why'd you do that?" Because you say it's too gross to play, and I'm not trying to play to get cash. I'm trying to win.
You're talking to the guy who ran Baker doubles this week, so I don't think it takes a lot to gross me out, man.
The other one I want to talk about that we didn't really get to is, and at their pricing, I'm going to go over and look and see where he is talking about stacking a game, is the San Francisco game. Mm-hmm. We saw what Ayuk is, and here's why I bring them up. They're a team that in any given week, 1 week it could be Debo, 1 week it could be Ayuk, 1 week it could be Kittle, 1 week it could be CMC. Usually it's going to be 2 of those guys a week. And to me, they're the opposite of like a QB that you like. They're the opposite of Patrick Mahomes when Kelsey isn't there. Just take Mahomes. Don't play any of others pass catchers because you never know who's going to get the ball. Versus this is play everybody, and right. And then Brock's probably still going to be super cheap this week. Yeah. Oh yeah, look at his price, right? So Brock's going to be super cheap in a game on which we know what San Francisco can do against the Rams. Mm-hmm. And then you start looking, where did Puka come back at in this? Did they jack his price up? Because he's going to get used until Cooper's back.
Yeah, 49.
Yeah, I don't hate that pricing for all that. You got to get cheap with your last 2 players, but I think there's some uniqueness if you want to start talking about a game stack environment.
Yeah, that's super interesting too. And I mean, everybody but CMC on San Francisco is priced below 6K. You don't see that a lot on an offense that powerful. And then Puka as a nice bring back at only 4.9. Have you lost all faith in Van Jefferson at this point?
I overdrafted Puka. I have literal 0 Van Jefferson. 0. I didn't trust him. I liked. I'll take Atwell over Van. Yeah. We knew Higbee is going to be who Higbee is, right? He was, the safety blanket there, and we know who Van isn't. He's a lot of talent that I don't think is ever really going to deliver.
That's fair. He's valuable to this offense for what he does. He's able to manipulate a safety. He's able to go deep. He's able to keep a defense honest from cover 2, but not much else. And he'll have a sporadic blow up game off a deep reception. But against San Francisco, although they did kind of struggle against deep passing last year, interesting. I'm with you though. I think Tutu Atwell with the speed, Puka with the expected volume. I think those are probably better plays on paper if you're attacking this game environment. And if you're looking to get weird, it's not going to take a lot if you're attacking this game environment. So you can go rather chalky behind it. Let's talk about tight ends real quick. And then we'll get out of here, try and keep it to an hour. But we might potentially have Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, or we could not and just be crying again in our best ball dreams. Anything. I mean, we have three of the top. I guess actually George Kittle's there too. We have 4 of the top 5 tight ends in the NFL on the slate. Only missing TJ Hawkinson, who plays on Thursday. So how do you think that affects the kind of dynamics of the slate now that we potentially could have options amongst the elite here?
I am give me all the Darren Waller. If I think the field's going to overreact to Dallas spanking them and using that
bounce
O
back
line
spot
like
here.
they Dallas's front used that offensive line like a turnstile at Disneyland on a busy weekend. Right? It was just as fast as they could get through the line. Arizona is not that. I think this is another game environment that really could get a lot of overreaction. And we know where the ball's going. It's going to Waller, Saquon, Jones can run. I love Waller in this spot. Same if Andrews is back, I'm playing him. If Kelsey is back, somebody's got to catch the ball. Right? Like we saw what happened in Kansas City. Speaking of Mr. Targets, if you're watching this, right? Speaking of targets, Mr. Zach Ertz. The problem is they don't have anybody to throw him the ball.
It's interesting. I thought that coming into this game with Joshua game manager jobs at quarterback, I thought that the tight ends would be interesting. I didn't have the balls to play either of them. Obviously, Zach Ertz, but 32-year-old tight end coming off of multiple ligament damage in the knee. I was not going there. Is that something that you might be interested in against the Wink Martindale Giants?
That might be my line. As gross as I'm willing to get. If I'm going tight end in that game, it's just Waller for me. I'm all in on Waller. I think when the season's all said and done, I think Waller has, top 5 fantasy tight end upside. I think he's going to have some monster weeks, and I want to be on him when they hit. It's for me, it's like Fields last season. We kept going back to the well, knowing like, hey, like when he hits, we're going to break slates. And, credit to Jam to get me to, follow that. And I just kept going there. And then when he did, it was a monster. I think Waller and DJ and Saquon are in that. Now, everybody loves Saquon, but overstacking, playing that environment. And we kind of saw, like, we don't know what the Giants defense really is yet because I just don't know anything from that game. I can't really judge that game because that opening drive, the Giants look good. I think if they score on that first drive, maybe it's a different game. Not really sure on where that went. But tight end will be interesting. Cheap tight end. Laporte is 39. I'm going to love Kincaid again at 3,300.
There's two. I'll bring it up. The two that I have listed right here.
Yep. Yeah. As soon as I saw I'm a big Kincaid guy. They used him how I wanted tonight while Allen had a bad game. He had the usage I wanted.
And he was all over the formation.
They're going to make him their wide. I think by the end of the season, he's their wide receiver too. One of my bold takes and one of my big offensive player of the rookie of the year bets is on him. I think once he gets going and he gets comfortable, you saw, they were using Knox out there too, but I think he's going to get a ton of targets in that offense. And same Musgrave, we saw what Love did going over the middle against Atlanta. I like those guys there.
Yeah, I think Musgrave is interesting as well because we're probably going to get this like catch-2 polling between the box score watchers who saw that he didn't put up yardage and the other side of the best ball crowd who saw his ADP take that meteoric rise. So it's going to be an interesting situation. I think both of those guys are probably going to come down to ownership for me. But I think both of them I'm probably not going to the Green Bay Atlanta game environment. I'm probably might be interested in a Buffalo overstack, but these are two guys that I think can play a valid one-off role kind of for us this coming
especially
week.
At that price. It's a great price for them.
Yeah, for sure. Any other tight ends that you kind of see in this list here that you like pay down, we'll say now? Donald Parham scored a touchdown. Any interested there?
I'm going to go back to, let's keep scrolling out. I'm going to go back
down.
to
Jesus.
I'm going to go to, no, I'm looking here. I'm going to go back to Herb Smith again. I think he has, at 3,200, he has some upside. The other one that, Parham, Bellinger, if something happens with Waller this week, give me Bellinger at 2,800.
If
I think
something
he can
happens
get-
with Waller, that's it's just like
He-
he could
he
pull
could stub
something
his
at any
toe on
moment.
Yeah, like he could stub his toe on a pillow and rip a tendon and be out 4 weeks. It's Darren
That's
Waller.
classic.
Right? Like that's what I mean. When I draft him for season long, I expect 12 games. That's like my
Yeah.
I'm disappointed in the Raiders' usage of Mayer.
Yeah.
I didn't really love how they used him, so I'm probably not going to go there, which means he might crush. Hooper, right? Like Hooper got some targets, and yeah, I mean that's really at the bottom for me.
Yeah.
Nothing else I really like at tight end.
We got to do it, dude. It's the obligatory
Okay.
defense. We got to talk about them. I know. Keep scrolling if you don't like defense. No, I'm just kidding. The San Francisco 49ers up here at top. Obviously, the Cowboys against the now Aaron Rodgers-less Jets. These are two defenses, that manhandled their opponents in week 1. On the flip side of that, it's going to be an interesting test for the Giants against Dallas, who kind of had their way and looked very good on offense. And I think a lot of that was due to Brandon Cooks being able to stretch the field, open up the middle of the field for the tight ends for CeeDee
Mr.
Lamb.
Ferguson.
Yes, sir. That was a name we skipped over, but my highest owned tight end in best ball, Mr. Ferguson, old Fergie boy. That's I like that call as well. But are you completely anti never will pay up for defense in
No,
DFS?
I'm a flip flopper.
Yeah, same.
At the right ownership, I will always pay up. So if you give me, want to talk about another overstack, if the Niners start coming in low at that price, sign me up. Like if the Cowboys come in low against Zach Wilson, sign me up. So I'm a flip flopper. I won't play I would say never, but I very rarely play the cheap chalk defense. I'm generally just trying to find one outside of there. So I tend to go top to bottom. So as I look there, like those are the two. If any kind of decent ownership, I'll pay up. Right. As we scroll down, we start seeing who do I see as we scroll through here? I see
probably Commanders maybe again.
Yeah. They're going to be, I think the Commanders are going to be super owned. I think people are going to go to the Bucks after that opening week.
Yeah. Especially how bad Chicago looked in Green Bay.
Yeah. They didn't look good. The interesting one in the middle for me could be the Colts against a rookie quarterback. Now, I think Stroud looked good for his first start. Like I was happy with his reads. I liked his footwork. I like his arm talent. I think that could be a middle of the pack where you could get a little different. And the other one that's up top that I don't think anybody's going to play after what happened. I don't think anybody plays the Giants against. I think they're going to be scared. They're going to say, "Hey, let's see what happens." Right? Like I'm not sure how they're going to go after that Dallas game. And if we can get them pretty cheap, I mean, it's Arizona. They're starting Josh Dobbs. Like there's a lot.
That's an interesting call because Wink Martindale defenses are notorious for absolutely manhandling below average quarterbacks and offensive lines, and then struggling with quarterbacks who know how to change a play at the line of scrimmage, know how to identify where the blitz is coming. Because Wink is a freaking madman. He's just setting the house. His blitz rates are always leading the league. So that's an interesting call. I like that. They could create some havoc. One I'm kind of interested in here is Atlanta, because we just got done talking about how Atlanta has all this new talent, all this new athleticism on the defensive side of the ball. The only problem is the matchup with Green Bay is not ideal because the Packers still have a top 10 offensive line. We want to see pressure in the backfield, so there might not be that. But I'm interested if they're not going to have ownership. So kind of interested a little bit there. But yeah, like you said, I like those top three or the three at the top, we'll say 49ers, Cowboys, and Giants. And I think there's some interesting options, not the Commanders down here paying down. The Jets, I mean, there's going to be no ownership on the Jets, considering what they just did in week 1 and what Dallas just did in week 1. But yeah, that's an interesting one as me. Anything else you see here in defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, so I think that's a good example. So if we start seeing Dallas get a ton of ownership, if we start seeing right Dak and the CD and the Pollard, everybody climbing up, I love to pivot to a defense off of them. So that's
Yeah.
one right now. All of a sudden, you grab Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall and the Jets D to go against that, and then I think he can get interesting and weird.
Yeah.
What the other one? Yeah.
How quickly we forget that Dak threw 17 picks last year.
Dak missed all those games, right? And still had all those picks. Don't forget that. Dak, that wasn't from a full season, guys. Dak did that while missing. It was either 5 or 6 games. I don't remember which one it was, but it was 5 or 6. So here's the one other defense I'll ask about real quick. How many did he miss total?
5, yeah.
Yeah. No, he missed. Yeah, because of the bye. So I missed. No. Yeah, I missed 5. So he threw that many, missing 5 games. What about if Kelsey's not back?
Okay.
If Kelsey's not back, what do you think about Jacksonville stopping their defense, against Mahomes? I get Mahomes is Superman, but we saw what that receiving core isn't. Again, I don't know why we get our hopes up. Remember that offense had Tyreek Hill, which whatever. But that I think the Jacksonville defense could be interesting pivot too as well.
I think so too. When you look at the Jaguars depth chart, they are the fastest per player of any NFL defense. They are fast and they can close gaps. I played some Jacksonville defense this past week. They were playing a rookie quarterback, all that stuff. For all those reasons, they are really freaking fast, and that creates problems. This could be one of those 4-sack Patrick Mahomes games, which almost never happens. I like that call if they're not going to be owned, which is interesting. Any parting shots, dude? Thanks for coming on and joining us, man.
Yeah, it's good to see you. We haven't we just got to text a little bit, haven't got to talk. All right, so let's do an overreact and a flag plant this week. So what I think the field will overreact on. I think the field is going to overreact on Cincinnati and forget that it's Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. And then my flag plant this week, without any ownership, is I'm gonna go a Giants overstack versus the Cards.
Okay. I like it. I'll steal for your. Oh, we're doing flag plant, not just overreact. Let's see. Probably
you can save that for later in the week.
No,
that's just my initial.
No, you can't one up me on my own damn show, dude. Come on now. Let's go. Yeah, I'll take overreact to. I'm gonna go overreact to the Rams because they looked competent and say that they're not, primarily with their defense. And I'll go flag plant on. Something we didn't even talk about, but I'm gonna flag plant this man right here, Keenan Allen.
Ooh, I like
situation.
I like that matchup. I mean, he had the targets there, the options there. I think he's gonna get used a lot, and we saw.
Yeah, you could.
I like him.
You could even overstack that because I think the major talking points from the industry this week are going to be about the heavy rush rates. And I think that knowing who Kellen Moore is, that was probably more matchup dependent than it was an indication of what to expect from this offense moving forward. So I think the field might overreact, and I'll flag plant that offense. I think the field is probably overreacting to the low ADOT. I think Herbert had like a 4.1 ADOT in this game or in week 1, and I'm going to flag plant them. So that's awesome, man. I like that. That was a cool exercise. But that's going to do it for us for today. You know where to find us, and we are going to see you in them draft lobbies. We'll see you at the top of the leaderboards, y'all. This was First Mover. See ya.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you, allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.